The iPhone 13 and 13 mini both came out over a year ago in late 2021 and were great upgrades to the iPhone line. While you had the 13 Pro and the 13 Pro Max alongside them, these phones compromised very little while costing significantly less money, with the main concessions coming in only 2 camera lenses and a lack of a ProMotion display. But the phones still had essentially the same hardware and performance, the same main camera quality in the least, and even that smaller notch, all in one of 2 sizes, both of which are still available to buy from Apple today as options in between the iPhone 12 and the iPhone 14 and 14 Plus. Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and as it stands right now for 2023, I'd say the iPhone 13 and 13 mini are the best value iPhones you can buy new from Apple, and it's not particularly close. And so to answer the question right away, yeah, the iPhone 13 and 13 mini are both absolutely worth buying, and I'd even go as far to say you should buy them. Timestamps are in the description if you'd like to skip ahead, and you'll also find there links to buying guides I've done for both new and used iPhones if you want to look around. Whether you buy the iPhone 13 or the 13 mini comes purely down to which size you would prefer. The only benefit to the larger option, besides the screen being larger, is that the battery is also larger, and so it has a little bit better life. That being said, the 13 mini's battery is pretty darn good, and this is the final mini iPhone Apple even sells. The 12 mini was discontinued, meaning that if you're looking past the iPhone SE, you'll be buying the iPhone 12 or 13 mini at $600 or the larger 13 at $700. Do not buy the mini purely to save money. The extra $100 is worth it for the larger size, so again, get the phone that you feel suits you best. You also should not buy the iPhone 12. The iPhone 12 at $600 comes with 64 gigs of storage, and the 128 gig model comes in at $650. The iPhone 13 starts with 128 gigs and costs $700, meaning that if you want the higher storage, which you probably do, even if you've got an iCloud subscription, it's only $50 more for a phone that's a year newer and has all of the standard upgrades you would expect year to year. Better camera, faster specs, and ultimately, it'll likely get an extra year of software support over the iPhone 12, though the inevitable obsolescence is still many years away, with Apple typically supporting their phones for at least 6 years or longer. And right now on iOS 16, there isn't really any performance difference that's notable between the iPhone 12 and the iPhone 13. They're both very fast. But the iPhone 13 and 13 mini are better value than the iPhone 12. And if you want a small phone, there's no 12 mini, so you don't have a lot of options. But then there's the iPhone 14, only $100 more from the iPhone 13, and the 14 Plus, only $200 more. Surely you might as well spend that extra bit for the latest and greatest, right? Well, no, you shouldn't. I said before, from the iPhone 12 to the 13, you get the year-to-year upgrades that you would expect. That isn't the case with the iPhone 13 to the 14. They both have the same chipset in the A15, albeit the 14 is slightly faster as it uses the one that was in the 13 Pro, not the 13. It's a very insignificant upgrade, but beyond that, the camera setup hasn't really changed besides some better low light photography. It doesn't have the 48 megapixel sensor the 14 Pro has. It doesn't have ProMotion. The display is the exact same with the same notch. The 14 Pro or the 14 Pro Max are the phones to go for if you want to aim higher than the 13. The 14 at 800 and the 14 Plus at 900 are ludicrous and absolutely pointless when they bring so little over the iPhone 13, to the point that it's almost silly Apple made them at all. The 14 Pro at $1,000, on the other hand, might be expensive, but it is at least a real jump, with the camera system and display being significantly better from those lower tier models. Weirdly enough, it might just be the iPhone 13, 13 mini, 14 Pro, and 14 Pro Max that are actually the most worth buying from Apple right now. Typically, I recommend avoiding the Pro phones, but this year around, the iPhone 14 is just way too similar to the iPhone 13 and doesn't bring enough upgrades that the 14 Pro sees. Now, don't get me wrong, the iPhone 14 isn't necessarily a bad purchase, and it is the better phone, but for $100 less, I would take the 13. And if you were looking at the 14 Plus for $900, I would just go up to the 14 Pro Max for $1,100. It's a significantly better phone, but for everyone else, the 13 is a no-brainer. From the design and fantastic display to the great dual camera system on the back, you have the stellar performance and smooth software experience. The iPhone 13 is a premium iPhone that might still cost a pretty penny, money, but it is more than worth the price of admission, at least with the other options taken into context. Another option I'd like to bring up is buying the iPhone 13 Pro used. Odds are it would cost you around the same amount of money as it would to buy an iPhone 13 brand new. And while yeah, you're getting a phone brand new, the 13 Pro is quite the upgrade. Of course, another video I've already done, but it might be something to consider, and we will look at the used market a little bit later on. So with that being said, we're going to take a step back here and talk about some more specifics regarding the 13. Of course, this here is the 13, and I actually don't own a 13 mini, but as said before, they're the exact same phone minus the size. So everything I say here should apply to both devices unless otherwise stated. The built-in hardware used is classic premium Apple. We've got the flat aluminum sides and glossy glass back as first seen with the iPhone 12, which was a major upgrade from the iPhone 11 in terms of making the device feel more premium and less chunky without any actual compromise. The glass allows for wireless charging, and we do have MagSafe here if you buy one of those chargers separately. The iPhone 12 first brought this in, and likewise we also have 5G networking here. Notably, if you're in the US, this is the final iPhone along with the 13 Pro to have an actual SIM tray, as the iPhone 14 and 14 Pro have gone eSIM only. That shouldn't be a problem for most, but if you travel a lot, it's definitely convenient to be able to pop SIM cards in and out. Luckily for me, I'm in Canada, so my own iPhone 14 Pro does have a SIM tray, and the 13 does as well, regardless of location. For colors, we have a few options here. There's blue, pink, midnight, starlight, green, and product red. I have the starlight model. They all look pretty good, but really, the phone looks the best from the front. The gorgeous display on that big iPhone 13 is 6.1 inches with a resolution of 1170 by 2532 and pixel density of 460 pixels per inch. The 13 mini is quite a bit smaller at 5.4 inches, and because it is smaller, it does have a slightly higher pixel density at 476 pixels per inch. There's no real difference, and the displays on both phones look absolutely gorgeous, and mixed with the smaller notch makes for a very premium iPhone experience. It feels like a newer iPhone, because, I mean, it is. We don't have ProMotion, unfortunately, but neither does the iPhone 14, and I can live with that. What we do have is pretty darn good battery life. Of course, the 13 mini is a little bit lesser, being a small phone, but either one should get you through the day absolutely no problem, assuming the battery is healthy, which it should be given these phones aren't too old, and overall the battery life is, if anything, pretty impressive. So that's enough of the actual body and design of the phone. Let's talk about the cameras. One big reason you might actually want an iPhone 13, because it nails it in this department. We have two 12 megapixel lenses on the back, one wide and one ultra wide, so you're missing out on the third lens on the Pro phones, which is 3x zoom, also 12 megapixels. I really like having that telephoto lens, and so for me it is kind of a big deal, but that differs person to person, and these are great cameras that can take great pictures. I'm not going to waste much of your time with comparisons because, frankly, they don't really matter. I suppose you could compare the iPhone 14 to the 13, but truthfully, there's very little difference in the cameras, with the main improvement really being low light photography. That did definitely get better with the 14, but the 13 still isn't even bad in this department. In fact, the iPhone 13 reliably and consistently can take a good shot in basically any condition, and that's really what I want from a camera. I want to be able to pull out my phone, take a few pictures, and put it away without actually looking at those pictures because I'm confident I got something that's going to look good. And with the iPhone 13, you're absolutely going to be getting that. For video, we're looking at 4K 60 frames per second, pretty typical for iPhone. This was recorded in 30 FPS. Note that the stabilization is also pretty darn good. Naturally, this is an iPhone. iPhones always take great video. This is totally good for 2023 and beyond. And then there's the selfie camera, which is 12 megapixels and can take a good looking selfie, assuming you're not me. No, it's going to be more than enough for anybody. The overall camera package here, it's really impressive, and the differences that do exist between it and the iPhone 14, it's certainly not $100 worth of differences. So yeah, camera, really good. This is a fantastic phone. It's not that old, and it does perform well in every single area. That includes with technical specs and speed. We have an A15 Bionic chipset here. Again, just like the iPhone 14, except the 14 actually uses the one that was in the 13 Pro, which is very slightly better. Another minor difference, 6 gigs of RAM in the iPhone 14, 4 gigs of RAM in the iPhone 13. Will this make any difference in day-to-day usage? Not really. You probably would see some differences when it comes to stress tests, having a bunch of apps open at once, but even then, iOS is extremely well optimized. You're not going to have lag or slowdown or any issues, and that should continue to be the case for probably the next half decade or so. So when it comes to hardware, you're pretty darn set with the iPhone 13, even if it's ever so slightly behind a phone that's $100 more and only a year newer. The iPhone 13 mini at $600 or the iPhone 13 at $700 isn't perfect value, but it's definitely better value than the iPhone 14 and the 14 Plus, and worth getting to save some money. It is also worth going up to from the iPhone 12. Either the iPhone 13 or the 13 mini are worthy purchases in my opinion, so $600, $700. If you can't afford them, you could always look at the used market. I mentioned before that the iPhone 13 Pro is a really good buy used, and I stand by that, it is. But the iPhone 13 is also cheaper. Keep in mind the phone is still relatively new, so there's not going to be a ton of listings on, say, eBay, and the ones that are there are not always the most reasonable. I was seeing $500 pretty commonly. I think at that point, for myself at least, I'd pay a bit more to get a 13 Pro used, or just buy the new phone. But if you do find a really good deal on the iPhone 13, hey, don't hesitate to go for it, because again, I strongly recommend this phone. It is the phone I recommend the most right now for people looking to buy an iPhone, and that's probably not going to be changing anytime soon. So with that, I think we're right about done here. Definitely want to hear from you guys, those of you with an iPhone 13. I'm sure there's quite a few of you. I mean, it's a very popular phone for a good reason. It's a really strong iPhone entry, and in a way, it was too good, leaving the iPhone 14 not a lot of headroom to improve. But anyways, if you found this video helpful or interesting, maybe hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content just like this. With that all being said, thank you so much for watching. I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and I will see you all next time.